So before I get too far in this discussion video, catch yourself up to speed by watching the Bungie ViDoc on the Season of the Drifter. But if you don't really feel like it, I can catch you up to speed in about 10 seconds.
Things are getting a little wild at Caillou's house.
We got feedback from players.
And now that you're up to speed, let's start this discussion video. But first, I noticed while editing that this Reflection Strider pops a super, and the Ogre Primeval, having enough of his shit, just immediately aims for his teammates instead. I thought that was pretty funny. But now on topic, let's talk about what's coming down the pipeline for Destiny 2, which, from what I gather from the video, is a revamped version of Gambit with all the player feedback from over the months being implemented. And for that, I can't deny that I'm pretty excited. I always thought Gambit was on the cusp of being something great. All it took was just that little nudge of player feedback, and Bungie has had ample time to put that into action. For those of us that already own the annual pass, I recommend giving the revamped version of Gambit an honest attempt to see if you like it. And for those of us who have not purchased the annual pass, be a critical consumer and wait until something strikes your fancy before you actually go through and buy the annual pass. My relationship with in-game purchases and microtransactions is as follows. If a game is doing things I enjoy, if the developers are having clear conversations that indicate that they are going to take feedback and then speedily implement it, then that is when I am comfortable forking over money. There have been periods of time in both Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 at which I would have been comfortable doing so. But as for the section of the game that I enjoy, PvP, the Crucible, updates have been too far and too in between for the very obvious outliers of the game. Now, in the background is a very brief infographic I wrote up on skill ceiling, skill gap, and skill floor, and how it relates to pre-Forsaken and the modern day Black Armory. I'm just going to go through this really quickly. Skill ceiling. That's how well a player can express game mastery through practice of muscle memory, strategy, reaction, player psychology, and depth of game knowledge. The skill floor, on the other hand, is the minimum level of competency to actively participate. I'll explain these more as I go along, but in between both of those is the skill gap that can be inferred through differences in competency. Remember that these are just my personal definitions of skill ceiling, skill floor, and skill gap, and it can be applied to the game in general or to a specific skill. In this case, in the background, I'm talking about sniping. Let's meet our players. Player A is new to Destiny 2. He finds he is most successful when hard-scoping from his spawn, picking off Guardians too impatient to play the objective. He's okay at aiming, but sometimes he gets flinched off the kill shot. Player B went flawless once in Destiny. He's able to confidently aggress as a sniper, relying on the last word and hunter jumps to clean up any shotgun apes. He's great at aiming, but lacks some of the higher up game sense to preemptively set himself up to react faster than his opponent in sticky situations. And finally, this brings us to player C, who has sealed his virginity away in exchange for complete mastery over his weapon. He's virtually a human aimbot with superior aim and reaction speed, but he didn't stop there. He learned how to snipe while shoulder charging, while dawnblade floating, and while hip firing. He learned pixel-wide angles and places to ricochet bullets into common sightlines. Pulses fear him. As you can see on the chart to the left, I place these players relative to each other. You can very obviously tell who the better player is. If you compare player A to player B, you can tell that player B is better. If you compare player B to player C, you can definitely tell that player C is better. But in today's meta, that distinction is very difficult to make. Let's meet player A. He's new to Destiny 2. He saw a guide on this unknown website called YouTube, where he saw his favorite content creator using one-eyed mask with 5 supermods. If this content creator thinks it's good, then surely it is. Now, player B went flawless in Destiny 1 once. He found that the easiest bang for your buck strategy is to use one-eyed mask with the heat-seeking shields that give you an overshield on the kill. He spams his Luna's Hell anytime he sees an elbow and immediately shotgun apes when he marks somebody. Now let's meet player C. He plays a lot. He uses one-eyed mask because, for his level of gun skill, it's a free overshield for playing normally. He understands that it's advantageous to pace his not-forgotten shots so that he has the option to two-tap a flanker. He understands player psychology enough to suppress most enemy supers, and he chains his supers with his teammates, creating infinite supers for the duration of engagements in the match. What I'm trying to get at here is that the implementation of new exotics, supermods, subclass tuning, etc. have compressed the skill gap enough to where it just doesn't feel rewarding to actually attempt to master the game, which is, for me, most of the replayability in Destiny PvP. If Destiny continues this trend of putting PvP to the side and just ignoring very glaring issues, then I'm not excited moving forward in the world of Destiny 2. Don't confuse that with me saying that Bungie doesn't understand what the issues are. I've met some of the developers, and they are some of the most creative, clever, and passionate individuals when it comes to game development. All I'm saying is that a better job can be done on the communication front in regards to saying that, hey, we've identified this as an issue in PvP, we have this timeline on a fix, and these are some realistic solutions. I expect next week that maybe there'll be a small quality of life update, but more will come in the future. This is not the final fix. I will say that throughout Season 4 and Season 5, Bungie did do some of exactly what I said. However, a better job can be done because some fixes go many, many months before we even hear about them. And I hate to say that all the blame isn't to be put on the developers. We also need to look at the player base and how revenue is generated for Destiny. If Bungie has data that suggests that players don't even enjoy PvP or want to play PvP even when PvP is in its best state, then why even put any resources into improving PvP? If most players just play the raid or play strikes, for instance, why fix PvP? As a PvP player base, we send some mixed signals if you take a look at the quick play and competitive playlist. In the quick play playlist, I see teams of 6 trying their absolute hardest to win, while the competitive playlist is barren and empty despite encouraging that exact atmosphere. And before anybody brings up rewards, keep in mind that despite winning or losing in the competitive playlist, you still maintain your Valor win streak, which gives you more and more tokens from Shaxx. Believe me, I definitely agree that significant changes need to be made for the quality of life in the competitive playlist. You could add a suicide penalty, you could add gunsmith materials, enhancement cores, just for participation if you wanted to. A lot needs to be improved. I couldn't even begin to start. In one of my recent Twitch streams, I asked my viewers who enjoy intense PvP matches why they preferred Trials of Osiris as opposed to the competitive playlist that did a much better job of streamlining the competitive experience for players within your skill level. The answer eventually boiled down to, since the trial system made it so that it was win-based matchmaking, they were able to potentially carry a friend and show him the ropes on the climb up, whereas in the competitive playlist, if you queue with a friend, they will drown. They will not have any impact on the match whatsoever if there's a significant difference between skill level. So before this Twitch discussion, I had never heard that point about trials being so eloquently expressed. For the longest time, I just accepted that trials wasn't built for the kind of player like me, the kind that likes really intense PvP matches. For me to have that experience, I had to handicap my team. I had to essentially ask for a player that had no intention of playing PvP seriously so that me and 2 other friends could carry them flawless and they could get gear. But in the comp playlist, however, there is no carrying. You teach that person to become 5500 capable or you just don't win. And here's the thing that I think is the fundamental problem with even gaming today, which is I don't see winning as the best outcome for the game. I see making progress and becoming a better player as the best outcome for a match, even if I lose. I am more happy to lose and grow as a player than to effortlessly mercy a team and gain nothing from it. It seems as though the overall vibe I get from most of the PvP population is that people like to occasionally see a W on the screen by any means necessary, even if it's as a result of compressing the skill gap and using very cheesy methods to obtain that victory. And I know, use whatever, don't apologize, yada yada yada, play to win. I get that. I totally understand that statement, but if it takes, let's just say, 50 hours to become competent enough to win under those circumstances, whereas in a more skill-balanced game where you can express the full extent of the skill ceiling and it takes 2,000 hours to have a reasonable chance to win, I feel that the life of the game is significantly extended when there is a big discrepancy between the skill floor and the skill ceiling. But I'm realistic. I understand how a game like Quake Champions has took that idea and maybe ran for it too far to where there are only masters that play the game and it's too difficult as a new player to have any sort of firm footing in relation to winning a match. Now that I feel I've given you guys enough background, let me hit you with some core ideas that I wanted to present in this video. The first of which being, if there is an outlier in PvP that reduces the skill gap and makes it overall more unenjoyable, then very quickly it needs to be addressed and possibly altered within a very quick time frame. And yes, I understand that these kind of fixes require time and money, and that there needs to be significant interest in PvP to create a revenue stream, thus creating an incentive to even fix PvP in the first place. A cycle is created where players dislike PvP because it isn't nurtured, and PvP isn't nurtured because players hate PvP. So the best thing that needs to be done is yesterday, players should have given feedback on how much they enjoy the idea of PvP in Destiny, but the next best time to do that is right now, today. So please, take a second to write a comment, take a second to write a forum post, a Reddit post, etc. that says, I enjoy the idea of Destiny PvP, and here's what my idea of Destiny PvP looks like, and just leave it be. Please don't be a silent majority in this case. Give some feedback to where there is just an incredible amount of feedback to the point where it cannot be ignored. That's the goal here. It seems as though the trend in gaming is to abandon ship when the game becomes unenjoyable for you and never look back, whereas just even a minute of feedback on the way out the door could have salvaged that game to a point where the devs realized that, hey, this is what our player base likes, maybe we should just make more of that. So while this video could have been parting feedback while I go play other games, instead, I actually enjoy Gambit, so I'm going to be playing a lot of that in the next DLC, and like I said, I'm actually excited that Gambit got the twice over and might actually be a competitive aspect of Destiny, but that does not mean it substitutes PvP for me, because I think of PvP in this game as the lifeblood and not the side bitch. Maybe I'm in the minority for thinking this, but I'll never know unless everybody says so. So please, say so. On the same note, while I don't particularly enjoy the PvE aspects of Destiny 2, I have given my feedback in the past, which was along the lines of, hey, I enjoy PvE when it's extremely difficult. The Last Wish raid, for instance, was accidentally stupidly difficult, and I loved every second of it. So if Destiny PvE content in the future could be more like this, sign me up. Of course, I understand that that's a vastly minority opinion, and it's not realistic to think of because I see very conflicting feedback posts in the forums, Reddit, etc. that maybe say something like, hey, what happened to Infinite Blade Barrage in PvE with the Shards of Galanor? I really like playing like that. That was my idea of power fantasy, and you took it away. Whereas I personally think that having infinite supers makes PvE less fun. For another person, it makes PvE more fun, and it seems that, as far as forum feedback goes, there's more people who think infinite supers are fun. So, what do you think Bungie does as a response? If you said they make supers more abundant, more powerful, and easier to chain, then you would be absolutely right, because they're simply responding to feedback. And all I'm getting at in this video is that there needs to be feedback regarding PvP. Clear, extensive, and respectful feedback. I know you guys can do it.